Everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you guys for coming back for part 2 of my top paranormal romances of the early 2000s. And this particular video is going to touch on anything non-vampire related. So if you didn't see my previous video, then you can click up here. I have a whole video about the top vampire ones because vampires were like everywhere. And now we're going to talk about anything not vampire related. Again, I apologize for the poor video quality. It is the same evening and my phone just is not cooperating tonight. So we're going to do it this way. It's all good. Apologize for not great quality and probably not great audio. But we're going to roll with it. Top paranormal romance series from the early 2000s. And we're going to jump on in with number 1, the Demonica series by Larissa Ione. Ione. Don't know. I-O-N-E. That's how she spells her name. And I remember loving this series. It was the first book that came out in 2008, and it was called Pleasure Unbound. Now, this is kind of a cool series. It's General Hospital meets the paranormal. That's what it reminds me of. And so this world has all kinds of supernatural beings, obviously demons being one of them, obviously. It's called Demonica series. Demons are being the main one, and it all centers around, what's called the Underworld General Hospital. So it has this whole tagline, if you look at her website, about like, humans go to the human hospital, but where do you go if you get injured and you're a demon or a witch or something like that? And so they have the, Underworld General Hospital. So in the first book of the series, you have Taylor, who is a demon slayer, and she ends up getting hurt and sent to the Underworld General Hospital and wakes up, and the doctors and stuff taking care of her are demons. And she's like, oh poop, I'm a demon hunter in a demon hospital. How did I get here? And what do I do? And while she's there, she learns more about their world. She meets, I never was able to pronounce his name, Idolin. I think it's Idolin, who's a demon. And the two of them fall in love, and he is super, super cool and sweet, and it's a really interesting story. I remember really liking this series because I liked General Hospital, and so it kind of reminded me of like a demon version of General Hospital. The number 2 series I liked was Nightwalkers by Jacqueline Frank. This was another one that I just thought was so cool. It came out in 2006, and the first book was called Jacob. And in this series, you have Jacob, who's an enforcer for his people. The people are called the Nightwalkers, obviously. And they are a hidden species that live among humans. And during the full moon, they get this urge to mate. Which, whatever. And the problem with it is because they are supernatural and they have all these strengths and things, they can actually kill people. So Jacob is an enforcer who is responsible for finding these people when they go into their mating frenzy, before they can kill somebody, because they're taught from a young age to like keep control of yourself and to like not allow yourself to get frenzied. Well, if they do and they break the rules and they go out and they hurt humans, then Jacob is the enforcer that's responsible for policing them and basically killing them for those actions. And so one night he meets this woman, and he's out trying to find somebody who's killing, and he meets Isabella. And the problem is, being an enforcer, he has prided himself on staying away from the humans because he knows we can hurt humans if we're not careful with ourselves. We stay away from the humans because they're just not on the same level as we are. But then he meets Isabella, and all of his rules and good intentions go out the window, and for the first time he is wanting to break the rules and be with the humans. So again, really cool story, great series, and they all have names. So it's like Jacob and I don't know, some other dude's name. It's like names. So I really loved this series, and it's just very well done. The next series, number 3, is the Breeds series by Laura Lee. And this first came out in 2003. The first book in the series is called Tempting the Beast. And this series is kind of unique because it is basically a science experiment. So the breeds are created from sick, twisted scientists who start doing experiments on taking human DNA and splicing it with like animal DNA and creating people who are like half people or half humans and half like whatever. So when you get to this one, this is a lion breed series. So you have Callan, who is half lion DNA-ish and half human DNA, and they have all these special abilities because of their animal DNA. Well, long story short, Callan was raised by a kind of a foster mother, surrogate mother type thing, and she tried to keep him hidden because he escaped from these labs. In the labs, the breeds are horribly abused and done. They do all kinds of stick-twisted experiments on them, and he ends up escaping and is raised by like this foster mother type thing. And the mother passes away. And when she passes away, she leaves evidence of letters and different things that she's kept that hint to the fact that he's not quite all human. So then you have Marinus, who comes along, and she finds this information from his mother and realizes that he's not quite human, and decides to go out and investigate to write a story about him and find out the truth about what he really is. Well, when they meet each other, they end up becoming instantly attracted to each other. It is a fated mates trope. And something about with the DNA splicing and all the different changes they make to the DNA, that they have one mate that they are mated to and they become actual mates. And they end up with like a mating frenzy and all this stuff. But it's a really good series, and there's lots of different breeds. There's like lion breeds and tiger breeds and just all kinds of different, you know, mostly cats, and there's like wolves and stuff too. So really interesting, kind of like a shifter type thing, but they don't really all shift into their animal, if that makes sense. Shifter but not. Shifter-esque but not. And then number 4, I know why I like this series, because it was pretty much the same as the Breed series, and that's called the New Species series by Lauren Donner. Now, I can't remember the exact year that this series came out. If you look them up, they're going to have a more recent release date. I remember that Lauren Donner released these through a small publishing house that was really popular back in the day, and I can't remember the name of the publishing house, but I know they went under. It was like a few years ago, this publishing house went under, and so all of the authors that were published by them, suddenly like just all their books went off market, and so a lot of them had to go to other publishers and get picked up by other publishers. So you can still buy this series of books, it's just under a different publisher now. And the first book in the series was called Fury, and they are literally kind of like the Breed series. So it's this woman, Ellie, who finds out that she's working for a pharmaceutical company, and she is told to do experiments on this man. When she meets the man, she realizes that the pharmaceutical company is doing illegal experiments on people. And that this Fury guy is a baby that's been raised by these scientists who is, again, spliced with human DNA and animal DNA. And she's immediately sickened by this and comes up with this plan to get Fury out of the clutches of this pharmaceutical company, to get him free so he can live life on his own. And then obviously after that, it just follows them trying to free other animals, new species peeps. And anyway, it reminds me very much of the Breeds series. It's a very similar idea, but this is definitely more like erotica almost. It has a lot more like bump and grind into it, but it was also like, how do I explain this? I liked this series better than Laura Lee's Breeds. Laura Lee's Breeds was very much like this magical fated mate trope that we love each other because we met each other and it clicked and the birds were singing kind of thing. Whereas the New Species series, these were like just normal people who had to actually work in a relationship together, if that makes sense. So it was a little bit more realistic, but also not, because it's half animal, half people. The 5th series, I really, 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 really loved this one. This was my jam. The Feral Warriors series by Pamela Palmer. And the first book came out in 2009. It was called Desire Untamed. And this was, I looked this up and actually wrote this down from the author's website because it was super complicated and I couldn't remember how it all worked, but now I do. So you have these two immortal races who battled together to fight the demons for control of the earth, because at one point the demons had control of the earth and they fought them to get control back to keep humans safe. So the one was the mages, or the magic ones, and the Therians, who are shapeshifters. Now, the cost of them winning control of the earth was that they were forced to give up almost all of their power, and so they could only keep one Therian on each line of shape-shifting animal that could keep the power of their animal. Everyone else had to give up the power of the animal. So there are 9 of them that remain because they've been killed by the demons and the mages over time. And so they are called the Feral Warriors, and there's 9 of them. And the funny thing is the name of the book is literally the name of the animal. So the first book is Lion, which is obviously a lion Feral Warrior. And in order to turn into their animals and to maintain the power that they still have, they have to have their radiance, which their radiance is basically like a human woman who has magical powers that holds the powers of the animals intact. Their radiance passed away. She was killed. When that happens, it then transfers to another person, and that other person has to be protected until they come of age or until the person that's protecting them dies or whatever. And in this case, you have Kara's mother, who has been in charge of protecting Kara. Now, we find out later in the series, spoiler alert, that Kara's mother was not Kara's mother. She was actually just someone who was protecting her. But she passes away, and as soon as the mother passes away, her powers are released, and she's open and no longer protected. And so Lion finds her. He goes to the doorstep and finds her, because obviously that's their radiance. They need to protect her so that they can keep their ability to turn into animals and all that stuff. So, and he falls in love with his radiance, which is Kara. And then Kara, it goes on from there. It goes on with all 9 of the warriors, and there's like, Lion and Hawk and all these different animals. So it was a good series though, and it was really like a unique one, because I don't remember there being really any other series kind of like that. So I really liked it. Another really good one that I loved, The Warriors of Poseidon by Alyssa Day. This series came out in 2007, and the first book in the series was called Atlantis Rising. And the way this worked is that you had 11,000 years ago, before Atlantis fell, Poseidon assigned each couple of, like, a few chosen warriors to act as sentinels for the humans in the new world. And the rule was that you have to be among the humans and protect the humans, but you cannot interact with the humans. So, like, don't be sleeping with the ladies and whatnot. Well, fast forward. You have Riley, who lives in Virginia Beach, and she's drawn to the ocean, which is why she lives in Virginia Beach. And then you have Conlon, who is coming to the surface because they live underwater. Obviously, Poseidon, water, water. And he comes to the surface to retrieve Poseidon's trident or something that got stolen from Poseidon, something like that. And he sees Riley and immediately, like, falls in love with her. And it's a fated mates trope, and there's way more to that story that's super complicated as to why they have fated mates and how it ties into Poseidon and into the balance of power and all that. But I remember loving this series. There is this side series, and I can't remember the woman's name, but it was like Alaric and the woman, and it was one of those things where, like, the two of them were supposed to be together and they couldn't be together, and through the entire series these two were kept apart, and you were waiting for the story. You'd get a little piece of them and a little piece of them and a little piece of them until they finally got their book. And I remember loving this series so much, so much. Number 7 is The Immortals After Dark by Kresley Cole. Now, this is still a very popular series. This is kind of like top-notch paranormal romance. Lots of people have read these. I loved these as well. The first book came out in 2006, and it was called The Warlord Once Forever. Now, I didn't go through a whole lot of this detailed because this is such a popular series, but it's multiple different types of paranormal creatures. So some people consider this a vampire series because it starts off with a vampire. But you've got vampires, Valkyrie, witches, fairies, werewolves, like, you name it, it's here. And the paranormal world is called the Lore. They live among humans. They have their whole society just in hiding, and we don't know about them. And the very first book starts off with Nikolai, who is looking for his, fated mate or his bride, who he's already met. Her name is Mist. She's a Valkyrie. and she has been running from him because she does not want to be his mate, and she doesn't want him to have any power over her, which she knows when they become mates, he will, so she's running from him. And I remember just like every book in this series has just got different paranormal creatures that end up together. Really interesting series. And Kresley Cole, I mean, actually think that series might still be going on. I quit reading them for a few years. I need to go back and try to catch up. Number 8. Now this is one that I don't hear anybody talk about. I remember liking them back in the day, but again, I haven't read them in so long, I probably need to reread them. This was the Wingslayer Hunters by Jennifer Lyons. The first book came out in 2009, and it was called Blood Magic. Now, I remember that the Wingslayer Hunters were protecting witches. So it was like good witches and bad witches. And so you had the bad witches that were like a band of witches that traded their humanity for demonic powers. So they could do like bad things to people. And then you had the Wingslayer Hunters, who are like immortal beings that protect the good witches from the bad witches. I remember that. And then you have Darcy. The first book starts off with Darcy, who has no idea she's a witch, and then one day she comes into her power. And she has enough power that she can overcome the curse and get rid of these bad witches. Well, then you have Axel, who finds Darcy because he can feel her power, and he decides to protect her for 2 reasons. One, because she's a good witch who can break this curse and set everyone free of this big evil battle they've got going on. But 2, his sister has been cursed by a bad witch. So he thinks, well, not only can I save everybody, but she can also save my sister. And then obviously in the process, the 2 of them fall in love with each other. Number 9 was my favorite series. I owned all the books. I think I still have all the books. Do I still have all these books? I think I do. Pretty sure I do. I loved this series so freaking much. Anyway, Darkness Chosen by Christina Dodd. It was released in 2007, and the first book in the series was called Ascent of Darkness. And I remember this because it was such a unique storyline. So, the way it goes is back in the thousands of years ago, or whatever, you had a Russian warrior who was like super brutal and evil and mean and just pillaging and killing everybody. And he makes a deal with the devil that he wants the ability to be able to turn into a predator. Like, when I mean a predator, like an animal predator, so that he can have more power and kill more and more people. And the devil obviously takes him up on his wish. But what he doesn't tell him is that he will be cursed and his line will be cursed. So you have this whole line of his sons, grandsons, and whatnot, that every single one of them are cursed to now turn into these predators. And they have no control over the evil in them. Well, fast forward to recent day, and you have this family that came over to the United States, and they're in hiding. They are the man is a descendant of this guy, and he falls in love with a woman who's Romani. She's a gypsy. And it's unheard of because usually these people have so much evil in them, they're not able to love. So he is immediately like ostracized by the rest of the family because they don't understand how he can love someone because he shouldn't be able to. He's cast the curse. And he has to fight the darkness in him every day. And the only thing that holds him back from his darkness is that he loves his wife. Well, the story follows his sons and their quest again to find love, because again with this curse you're not supposed to be able to feel love, and they do, and they don't know why. And there's a whole complicated story as to why they can feel love and why they have this familial relationship that they do. But it starts off with Anne, who's in love with her boss, and her boss is, I call them Jasha. I don't know if in Russia that's different, like Yasha or something. I don't know. I call him Jasha Wilder. And she has no idea that he's the senator. She just thinks he's her boss. Like, that's all. He's my boss. He's a great guy. He's my boss. She has no idea. And she is just madly in love with him. And then it follows all the rest of the sons. What's cool about it is you find so many things about this curse and how they can break this curse as the series goes on. And the last book in the series, I bawled like a flippin' baby. Bawled like a flippin' baby. It was not. I had tissues. My mom was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Eh." I can't talk. I loved that series so much. I think I still have all the books. Now I want to like dig them out and read them. OMG. Anyway, those were my top non-vampire paranormal romances from the early 2000s, and I would be interested in hearing what you guys read that were non-vampire. Have you read any of these series? And if you haven't, you'll have to let me know if you do down the road. But I'm interested to see, am I missing any? Because there were just so many. I'm telling you, 2000 to 2010, and especially like 2005 to like 2008-ish was like the high prime time of paranormal romance. There were so many. So, I can't wait to hear what you guys have read, and let me know what you think of the ones I did mention. Alright, guys. I will see you in the next one.